Hello and welcome to my channel. This channel is all about reading audiobooks from Aaron Hunter or similar books. The book we're reading today is called Hawkwing's Journey, and it is a super edition within the series Warriors written by Aaron Hunter.
Hawkwing was roused from his sleep in the warrior's den by the sound of his father's voice yowling through the camp. "Let all cats gather here beneath the rock pile for a clan meeting." Around Hawkwing, his clanmates were already leaping up and heading out of the cave. He staggered to his paws and shook scraps of bedding out of his pelt. Exhausted from the journey and the shock of learning about the fresh attack, he felt as if he had hardly rested at all, even though the sun was already well above the trees. Hawkwing was the last to leave the den, following Rileypaw and Stormheart down the trail to where Sharpclaw waited at the foot of the rock pile. There was no sign of Leafstar. Hawkwing guessed she was still resting, but he spotted the two rogues, Darktail and Rain, off to the side of the gathering crowd. Hawkwing joined the others and flopped down beside his sister Cloudmist. "What now?" he muttered into her ear. Cloudmist shook her head. "Just listen," she whispered back. "SkyClan has suffered a second attack," Sharpclaw announced when all the cats had settled down. "It's time to change our strategy. To begin with, patrols will be larger from now on. The raccoons may have been driven off for the time being, but if they think we're weak or that there aren't many of us, they'll try to attack again for sure." "That makes sense," Hawkwing murmured to his sister. "It means every cat will have to patrol more often," she agreed, giving a quick lick to a scratch on her shoulder. "But if it keeps the raccoons away, it'll be worth it." Hawkwing noticed some of his claymates were casting mistrustful glances at Darktail and Rain, and he remembered the hostility of Sharpclaw and Mistfeather when the questing patrol had returned the night before with news of their failure. He thought too about his own hostility towards Darktail before they left on the second quest. Every cat blamed me for feeling that way, but now they seem to agree that Darktail is a menace. But Hawkwing didn't feel the same way anymore. After the events of the quest, and especially after seeing Darktail's grief at the death of his friend Toad, he couldn't help but trust the White Tom. The same suspicion his other claymates had begun to show appeared in the eyes of Waspwhisker as he rose to his paws with a sidelong glance at the two rogue cats. "What if the threat's actually inside the camp?" he asked. Every cat knew what he meant, and heads turned to stare at Darktail and Rain. Hawkwing heard one or two hisses, and some cat called out, "Yes, what about that?" Darktail remained calm in the face of Waspwhisker's accusation. He stood up and dipped his head politely towards Sharpclaw, as if he was asking permission to speak. "I never meant to hurt the clan," he meowed, "but I admit I made some mistakes. Surely it's a measure of my honour that I want to do everything I can to make up for it. Surely the fact that I'm still around, trying my best to put things right, has to count for something." Waspwhisker gave a dismissive flick of its tail. "Rogue cats just don't belong with the clan. They'll never understand clan cats' ways," he growled. "It's impossible." "This is true," Sharpclaw agreed. "Clan cats have rules, rogues have none. Clan cats are taught to care for each other. Rogue cats think only of their own survival. Darktail's not one of us, and he never will be." "That's not fair," Hawkwing blurted out, leaping to his paws. "Sharpclaw, you know that Darktail fought bravely for the clan when the raccoons attacked, and you should have seen the grief on his face when his friend Toad fell out of that tree. He has lost friends, just like we have. He doesn't need us throwing accusations at him." Even while he was speaking, Hawkwing was torn about contradicting his father, especially for a cat he hadn't known for very long. He wasn't keen either on repeating his earlier argument with Sharpclaw in front of the whole clan, but he couldn't stifle the conviction that this time Sharpclaw was being unreasonable and harsh. Sharpclaw whipped his head around to glare at his son, a look of outrage in his green eyes. "Why do you always have to argue with me?" he demanded. "Darktail isn't your replacement brother, and he doesn't deserve more loyalty than kin." "Wait, I'm not sure that's what Hawkwing thinks," Tail put in, but Sharpclaw ignored her, still fixing Hawkwing with a hard stare. Hawkwing's fur began to bristle. He felt like a scrap of twig being whirled around in the fierce gale of emotion. Grief and anger filled him at his father's words, along with confusion about why he would say such a thing, and every hair on his pelt burned with embarrassment as he realized all his clanmates were looking at him. The conflicting pressures were too much to bear. Unable to stop himself, even though he knew it made him seem as immature as a day-old kid, Hawkwing ripped around with a contemptuous flip of his tail and stormed away, back up the trail to his den. "I know it looks like I'm sulking, but I don't care what any cat thinks. If their father had been so unfair to them, they'd be as angry as I am now." Back in the warrior's den, Hawkwing flung himself down into his nest, letting his anger surge over him. but after a few moments, guilt and renewed embarrassment began to prick him like a thorn in his belly. If my claymates are patrolling, I want to be there with them, he realized. I want to help them and keep them safe. Oh, Foxtongue, I know I'm behaving like a petulant chit. Taking a deep breath, Hawkwind rose to his paws, ready to head back out of the den. Just then, a shadow fell over the den floor, and he saw that Pebblepaw was poking her head through the entrance. She was the last cat Hawkwind had expected to see. This feels totally weird. I've hardly spoken to her since we went on the first quest together. Are you okay? Pebblepaw asked. That must have been awful, having your father be harsh to you like that, in front of the whole clan, too. For a moment, Hawkwind didn't know how to reply. He didn't want to seem weak or immature in front of Pebblepaw. At the same time, he couldn't help asking himself what it meant that she'd left a clan meeting just to come check on him. I can't cope with this right now. I'm fine, he snapped at last. I don't need any cat's pity. Pebblepaw's eyes widened with hurt. Without another word, she withdrew from the den. Hawkwind followed her out and saw her stalking down the trail. That went well, he thought, annoyed with himself. Why can't I think before I speak? Pebblepaw, wait, he called out. The speckled white chick-cat halted, then after a heartbeat turned her head to look at him. What? I'm sorry, Hawkwind meowed. Even though he knew he had been wrong, it was hard to force the words out. I shouldn't have snapped at you. For a moment more, Pebblepaw hesitated. It's okay, she responded at last, ducking her head. Then she bounded off to the bottom of the cliff where her brother Parsleypaw was waiting. Hawkwind watched her go, an unexpectedly warm feeling creeping through him from ears to tail tip. I'm glad I said that. I don't want to fight with her any more. Glancing further out across the camp, Hawkwind could see cats still gathered around Sharpclaw at the foot of the rock pile. By the look of their bushed-up fur and twitching tails, they were still bickering. On the opposite side of the gorge, Darktail and Rain were heading up the cliff, leading a patrol with Bellapaw, Sandynose, and Mistfeather. Hawkwind bunched his muscles, preparing to bound down the trail and across the camp to catch up with the departing cats. Then he relaxed again with a sigh. It's no good. I want to protect the camp, but if I go herring after Darktail, it'll only make things worse for Sharpclaw. He waited until the patrol was gone, then he turned and walked back to his den. Hawkwind slipped through the undergrowth at the top of the gorge, following Bouncefire, Nettlesplash, Pebblepaw, and Sandynose, who had taken over Pebblepaw's training after Billy Storm's death. As part of one of the new larger patrols, Hawkwind kept all his senses alert for any sign the raccoons were back on SkyClan territory. To his relief, everything seemed peaceful. The camp had become more peaceful too, in the few days since the questing patrol had returned. Hawkwind's clanmates had stopped interrogating him about what had happened, and why they hadn't managed to track down Firestar's Kim. Leafstar, seemingly recovered from the loss of her life, had spoken from the rock pile, proclaiming SkyClan would wait until Echosong received another vision from SkyClan. Maybe, she'd meowed, the next prophecy will be clearer. Hawkwind wasn't sure that his leader was right. StarClan's advice hasn't exactly been helpful so far, he mused. What if they don't actually want to help us? He couldn't imagine why the spirits of their warrior ancestors would turn against them, but our luck could not have been worse, and there has to be a reason for that. Bouncefire, leading the patrol, brought them out of the undergrowth and across the stretch of grass that separated SkyClan territory from the two-leg place. As they approached, Hawkwind saw that a new two-leg rock made from freshly cut flat sticks had replaced the one that was burned. Thicker foliage had covered most of the scorch marks on the tree. Renewed grief swept over Hawkwind. It's like my brother was never even here. He was careful not to look at Pebblepaw as they and their clanmates padded past the two-leg green place. He didn't want to be reminded of how he had saved her instead of Duskpaw, and also he was surprised to realize he didn't want Pebblepaw to feel any trace of guilt about that terrible day. Reaching the further stretch of SkyClan territory, the patrol turned back. Nothing to report, thanks to StarClan, Bouncefire commented. But as they drew near to the wooded area above the gorge, Hawkwind spotted Darktail alone, skirting the edge of the trees as if he was heading for the camp from the direction of the two-leg place. He's not with a patrol, so what is he doing? Hawkwind wondered. His pelt pricked with anxiety as he saw Darktail crouch down, his head jerking as if he was being sick. But after a moment, the rogue Tom rose to his paws again and padded calmly away, making for the two-leg place again. That's really weird. Hey, Bouncefire, I need to make dirt, Hawkwing called out. I'll catch up to you. Bouncefire waved his tail in acknowledgement as he and Nettlesplash, Sandy Nose, and Pebblepaw vanished into the undergrowth. Hawkwing bounded over to where Darktail had stopped. On the ground, he saw a few scraps that looked and smelled like two-leg food. Hawkwing stood for several heartbeats, gazing down at the scraps. In one way, he wasn't surprised, assuming that road cats would eat anything. But what was really strange was the food hadn't been eaten. Darktail hadn't been sick. He must have been carrying the food in his mouth, and then dropped it. Maybe he didn't like the taste, Hawkwing thought, with a pang of pain as he remembered how much Duskpaw would have loved it. But then, why did he go back toward the two-leg place? Darktail was still in sight, a distant figure across the grass. Hawkwing decided to follow him, keeping his distance and making sure the breeze was blowing toward him and wouldn't carry his scent to the Rogue Tom. Unaware he was being followed, Darktail headed onward until he slipped down a narrow thunder path between the first ends of the two-leg place. Hawkwing felt his pelt prickle with apprehension. I don't want to go in there. Then he took a deep breath, bracing himself. If Darktail can do it, so can I. Hawkwing kept glancing around warily, alert for the appearance of two legs or monsters, as he crept along in Darktail's poor steps. To his relief, not much time had passed before Darktail halted, then wriggled underneath a shiny barrier that blocked a gap between two lines of bushes. Giving Darktail enough time to get ahead, Hawkwing squeezed through after him, and found himself standing at the edge of a stretch of smooth grass, surrounded by bushes covered with strange, brilliantly coloured flowers. At the far side of the grass, the walls of the two-leg den, built of reddish rock, loomed over him. His head spun at the mixture of unfamiliar sights and scents. There was no sign of Darktail, but Hawkwing could hear odd clanging noises coming from somewhere beyond the den. A moment later, the Rogue Tom reappeared, whisking around the corner of the rock wall. Terrified of being spotted, Hawkwing dived under the nearest bush. He crouched there panting, as Darktail passed within a tail length of him. I only hope these weird flowers are masking my scent. Then he tensed, digging his claws hard into the ground. Darktail had another piece of two-leg food gripped in his jaws. What does Darktail need two-leg food for? He wasn't eating it. No, he's taking it somewhere. What other possible use could he have for the two-leg scraps? The White Tom was too intent on his peculiar mission to notice Hawkwing in his hiding place. He wriggled under the shiny barrier again and headed back the way he'd come. Still tracking him, Hawkwing saw Darktail drop this new mouthful about halfway between the two-leg place and the spot where he'd dropped the first scraps of food. Then he bounded off, making for the camp. Hawkwing followed more slowly, not sure what to make of any of this. He felt like he'd gotten to know Darktail better on their last quest, and now he believed the Rogue Cat was good at heart. But what is this about? I could ask him, but Hawkwing felt a shiver of dread at the thought of admitting to his friend he'd spied on him. He already thinks the whole clan doesn't trust him. I'm the one friend he has. Glancing back at the two-leg scraps, Hawkwing felt uneasy. I have to think about how to handle this, he thought. I'm not really sure he's doing anything wrong. As Hawkwing slowly made his way back to camp, his heart was heavy. I want to trust Darktail, he thought. I just hope we really can.